So I'm going to move us over to our keynote, Dr. Jeffrey Nestruck, who comes to us from Franklin and Marshall in Pennsylvania, and he runs a Teagle grant himself. And we met him a couple of years ago at a convening for Teagle grant teams, and I'm going to give a quick introduction, and then we're going to bring him up here, and we're going to have a conversation with him about liberal arts and what that looks like at Miami-Dade College. So Dr. Nestruck is Professor of Legal Studies at Franklin and Marshall College. He's a graduate at the University of Pennsylvania Law School and has written widely on legal theory, business ethics, and liberal education. He has previously served as a chair of the Department of Business, Organizations, and Society at Franklin and Marshall College and director of the college's Center for Liberal Arts and Society. In addition to his scholarly writing, he has contributed personal essays to such national publications as the New York Times, Christian Science Monitor, and Philadelphia Inquirer, and such higher education venues as the Chronicle of Higher Education and Inside Higher Ed. He's been a visiting professor at the University of Michigan and has received a Dorset Fellowship from the Institute for the Study of Applied and Professional Ethics at Dartmouth College. He's also served as a Zicklin Research Fellow at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Most recently, he has been part of the Social Science Research Council's Measuring College Learning Project, co-authoring the project's white paper on the future of the business major. He's currently leading a Teagle Foundation study among Franklin and Marshall, Bucknell University, and the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, examining how to bring liberal arts content, skills, and pedagogies to the study of business. Does that sound familiar? Now in his 25th year of teaching at Franklin and Marshall, he is enjoying his job as much as ever, and we're very happy to have him with us today. So Dr. Nestruck, if you'll come on up.
Thank you very much. And I'm at the age, I'm glad she said 24th rather than 25th. Makes me a year younger here, so I really very much appreciate that. Gee, it's really great to be here. And I've received a great tour. I snuck into the Tesla lab. Should I say that when this is being recorded? Wow, cool things going on there. I got to go out and get one, I think. I have a neighbor who has one. He won't let me drive it. He lets me look at it from afar. That's the best I could do. But what a cool place. And you know, that upper level you have there that's empty, can I bring that back to Franklin Marshall College? I mean, so many colleges would kill for that. It's simply a wonderful space you have. I hope you know, sometimes when you're at a place for a long time, you don't appreciate how many good things are going on here. I've been here for just a few hours, and a lot of really good things are happening. So thank you so much for having me. You know, today I've been asked to give just a few brief remarks to get us started. I'll be with you throughout the day. I'm looking forward to it. And you know, mainly what I want to do is just tell my own story, because I want to make you aware of how this Teagle work you're doing here is really part of a much larger conversation. As she mentioned, I'm project director for a Teagle grant now. I'm on my home institution, Franklin Marshall College, Bucknell University, and the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. And we're now in the 4th year. We're at the end. We're at the dissemination. And I've had the opportunity to visit a number of colleges, talk with a number of faculty members who are doing Teagle work, and I've become convinced it's very important to share information with each other. And by that I mean not only the successes, but the struggles. I'm quite willing to talk about what went right, what went wrong, and how it eventually went right, because ultimately it's been very, very successful what we're doing here. But let's be sure we talk about not only the successes, but the challenges. So, my own story. I teach at Franklin Marshall College. And may I ask, how many people have heard the name Franklin Marshall College? Okay, a few, very good. People know Ben Franklin? Ben Franklin got started many years ago. Now here's the kicker. How many people know John Marshall? John Marshall. Are you the lawyer in the room by chance?
I'm from Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, Cleveland, Ohio. Okay. But John Marshall, famous Supreme Court justice, probably really responsible for so much of our current legal system, and it was both Ben Franklin and John Marshall who led to Franklin Marshall College. Now, what's interesting about being at Franklin Marshall College is I'm a business professor. I teach an innovative business course called a department called Business, Organizations, and Society. And Franklin Marshall is a liberal arts college. So I'm a business professor who teaches at a liberal arts college. And what is really fascinating about my position here is that I think I'm right at the junction, right at the connection between two of the major challenges facing higher education today. One of those challenges is on the liberal arts side. I call it the challenge of relevancy and connection. Why do the liberal arts matter? How are they relevant? How do they connect to the wider world? Why are the liberal arts important beyond our academic classrooms? And that's a very serious challenge now. I mean, you're certainly aware, many people are, that liberal arts are granted with increasing scrutiny, skepticism, in some quarters, outright hostility. And it's something I feel very, in a pointed way, teaching at a liberal arts college, where we hear it in many, many ways, most prominently from parents, well, how will this get my kid a job? And, I think about this challenge, I think back to my dad. My dad grew up in an immigrant family, single mom, first generation student, and he grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, and a public-minded lawyer sort of picked him out as a talented kid, and he got a full scholarship to go to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, which is a very, very good liberal arts college. And I remember the way the family talked about it. Johnny's going off to college. It was seen as something that just had absolute value, was unquestioned value. My grandmother, who would work in a restaurant washing dishes, she would brag to the fellow workers, my son is going to Trinity College. And when my dad would go down to help my grandmother wash dishes, they were astounded that a kid who went to Trinity College would wash dishes. There was a whole other world where the value of the liberal arts was simply unquestioned. Now, for the most part, those days are gone. And we have to think about how we have a better conversation, a larger conversation, for those of us who believe in the liberal arts. Now, what's interesting, remember, I'm a business professor who teaches at a liberal arts college. And there's a challenge that doesn't get the high profile we have nowadays, but a challenge on the business side. If you talk to people in business nowadays, my students, my business majors, know it'll get them a job, but they wonder will it get them the kind of life they're looking for. They really are looking for more, I think, than my dad looked for. They're looking for workplaces where they're treated with decency and respect. They're looking for flexibility. They're looking to collaborate, be creative. They want to bring their personal values to work. They want work to match their needs. My dad was quite one just to fit in to any environment. And you're going to see now, I think, in business is trying to react to this new generation that wants something more from work. The challenge that business faces is I call the challenge of meaning and purpose. Certainly in our political context right now, the legitimacy of business is being questioned. What is the purpose of business? How does it serve society? And beyond that, people in business are looking for finding meaning in their work. So there's a challenge on the business side that I call the challenge of meaning and purpose. Now, the great thing about being at this junction that I'm at right now, being a business professor at a liberal arts college, is I think this junction shows us a possible way forward. And that's where the Teagle work becomes so important. That is, how to connect the business world with the liberal arts. How, in the language of your grant, to contextualize liberal education. To show students how their liberal arts classes matter, make a difference for their professional aspirations. And I've seen this connection, thinking creatively about how business and the liberal arts connect, as being tremendously productive, tremendously successful at F&M. And one of the things I've seen that I think is important, and it's probably my first message for today, and I'd like us all to reflect upon it. When we think about the relationship of business and liberal arts, what I've seen at Franklin Marshall is that each needs what we more traditionally associate with the other. Each needs what we more traditionally associate with the other. As I said, the liberal arts need that relevance and connection to the wider world that is already part of business, okay? Liberal arts need to be more adeptly engaged, part of their communities, things that we see business doing. But business is struggling with questions of meaning and purpose. Why do I do this? How am I serving society? And so, while the liberal arts need to get more adeptly engaged, business needs to get more deeply reflective. And I've seen at F&M, when you put the two together, when you do it right, and it's hard to do it right, but when you do it right, you find bringing business to liberal arts makes the liberal arts more cross-disciplinary, more collaborative, more pragmatic, more connected with the wider world. But when you bring the liberal arts to business, you find that business gets not only more reflective, it gets more creative, more sustainable, more just. And so what I find is when you bring these two worlds together, when you do it right, it's hard to do it right, they really mutually enrich each other. Now, I can tell you a lot of stories, but I think I'll just start with one, and I'm glad to share more stories as we go through the afternoon today. But just to give you an example of how we do it at F&M. The approach we take is called using paired classes. I don't know if you know that use this language here or not, but what we do is we involve two separate classes, one taught by a business professor, one taught by a professor in liberal arts, and they're two independent courses. They have independent aims, they serve independent purposes. Maybe one will satisfy course requirements of business, another in liberal arts, all right? But what we do here with paired courses is we interweave them in some way. And how we interweave them is really up to the professors involved. And I was about to say one of the smart things I did, but I didn't realize I was doing one of the lucky things I did, rather, was not be too prescriptive about how these interweaving takes place. It's really important to tap into the values, the interests, the energies of the faculty members involved to make it work. And what I found at Franklin Marshall is people just rise to the challenge again and again. And the example I want to give you is I had a fellow in my department, Brian Stinchfield, teaches entrepreneurship. And he came to me and said, well, you know, I want to do a paired course with someone in our dance department, Pam LaValle, someone who teaches improvisational dance. And I was a bit taken back. I mean, what does an entrepreneurship professor have to say to a dance professor? Why would they collaborate? But I left it to their own devices, and they created this amazing common course module on fostering creativity. See, we leave it up to the professors. You can guest lecture, you can have common readings, you have joint meetings, you can do a common module, do a common event, and they really deliver in very interesting ways. And they both found they had a real interest on the entrepreneurship side in inspiring creativity, on the dance side in inspiring creativity. And some remarkable things come out of it. Now, rather than tell you more about that course, I want to have the students speak for me. Because one of the things we did, and I highly recommend it, is have your students do reflections of the experience they're going through. You'll learn an awful lot when you have students reflect on what they're getting or not getting. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read to you one of those student reflections. This is a reflection of a business student when she had to interact with a dance class. I'm going to ask you, when I do this, to put on your hats as educators, because I'm going to, again, just read her words. And I'm very interested in two questions as to what you hear when you hear these student words. So for the moment, could you imagine a student walks into your office and tells you these sort of things, all right? And I'm going to ask you, so please try to think about it and imagine this situation. I'd like you to tell me two things. First of all, what has happened to this student? What transitions is she going through? That's my first question. And the second question is why? What is inspiring these sort of transitions, these sort of changes? And I have my own take. I have my own take on what I see going on. But I was closer to it. You may see things, hear things in the words that I don't hear. So I'm hoping I'll learn things from you. So I'm going to read her comments here. And then I'd like to open up a little bit before I go forward about what do you hear as an educator? If someone walked into your office, a student said these sort of things, what would you hear, okay? And again, it's a business student who is now taking this common course module between the entrepreneurship class and the class of improvisation and dance. Here's what she had to say. I had no idea what to expect when I walked into a dance studio. The last time I took a dance class, I was in elementary school. I ended up quitting because I did not want to perform in public. Therefore, going into this, I'm a little nervous to dance in front of experienced dancers. However, after the first class, I felt excited for the next time in the dance studio. Why did she feel excited? During one of the exercises, we were told to close our eyes and lay on the ground and move. I felt immediately relaxed. Why did she feel relaxed? And when we were told to all finish our exercise in the class, I was in awe that we all managed to finish together. She was surprised that improvisation has an order to it. It felt like we were connecting as a group. I also felt more comfortable in my own body. What does that mean? Being more comfortable in my own body. In the line I love here, she said, the experience honestly felt transforming. I left the class feeling both calm and energized in a way that is difficult to explain. The students are feeling calm and energized. We want to work with that in some way. At the next dance class, I really enjoyed the composition exercise. They have me do a improvisational dance exercise. While watching the other group do the composition class, I found it interesting that even though it was improvisation, it looked composed. She's surprised by that. When it was my turn to do the dance, I was surprised when I would do the score without thinking. It was the first time in a long time I was able just to do without thinking. The act was freeing. What kind of freedom is she finding? Where's this coming? Throughout my academic career, I felt that analytical skills are highly valued and that deep thinking is necessary before making any actions. Additionally, I'm naturally a thinker, and I find myself lost in my thoughts and having to take time to think things through before making any actions. Much of my life is centered around thinking. The ability to free myself of that constraint was a wonderful opportunity. Why is it an opportunity for me? After the exercising with Professor Vail, that's Pamela Vail, the dance instructor, I felt I could be more creative. I strongly believe these exercises will benefit my personal life. She's taking a business class and bringing it into her personal life. What's going on when you cross boundaries like that? Then she says the creative design process, they then have a project where they have to do a creative design project. And what they ultimately created was a rooftop garden for the local hospital. But this is the process she's talking about. The creative design process that we conducted with the dance class was equally eye-opening. I really enjoyed working with the dance class students. They had a different perspective on issues, which I think added to the business class views on solving problems. She's surprised that other people have different views. With my group, involving both business and dance students, we got to the point where we're just throwing down ideas. A dance student picked up a marker and just started drawing an entire building. We had floors for each part of the creative design process, and more ideas than we could actually incorporate. The feeling was amazing, and that I had never really been able to just come up with ideas that fast. I felt that the increased creativity in the dance class and the new ideas from the dance students really helped me to create new innovative ideas. Now, I hear a lot going on when she's talking about it, and I hope you do too, but I'm interested in what you hear and see going on. So could I solicit some perspectives? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just interested, if a student came into your office and began to talk like that, what would your reaction be? What would your reaction be? Yeah, and if you don't mind telling me your name too, I appreciate getting to know people here.
Yes, I'm Rosa Mayorga.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, one of the first things that I thought of is you were reading, and she was describing the connection between the physical and the mental.
Yeah.
Of course, we tend, and there's many reasons, philosophical, cultural reasons, to think that the body and the mind are separate. You know, dualism.
We have a philosopher here, so she's going to enlighten us here.
And
Oh. Well, you know, I'm a lawyer between two philosophers. So I have a master's in philosophy also. I have a master's. Yeah, no, I understand. But in law school, we don't do a lot of dancing, right? Okay.
So it's that old Cartesian dualism.
Yes, yeah.
But of course, even Aristotle recognized that, you know, there is this intimate connection between the body and the mind. So it's really much more of a continuous relationship than how Descartes described it as something completely separate.
Right.
And so, and of course that has been recognized philosophically afterwards, but I think what she's describing is this actual connection. So as soon as she began actually physically lying down or whatever, you know, all of that stimulates her neurons.
Yes,
and so that's why I think she felt relaxed, etc. That's why we're told. Most of us sit at the desk all day, and we're told you need to get up, you need to walk around, and that in itself will create a physical reaction, which in her situation, she perceived it as being more relaxed, being more reflective.
Oh, I love it. When I write an article, I have to footnote you. This is terrific. Because I write a lot in the area of ethics, and I'm publicly identified as being an Aristotelian, so I understand exactly where you're coming from. But we are all sort of heirs of Descartes, you know. But what she's saying is there's a unity going on that we miss a lot of. Something was really lost when we go to that unity. Maybe something to do with creativity. It's clearly what she does. So that's very interesting to me. What else did people see? Okay. Oh, please, go. Jump right in. No need to raise hands, you know, that's okay.
I was going to say that you can quote her because she's a well-known author.
Okay, well, maybe someone will publish this article then. Thank you very much. I'll piggyback on your reputation here, okay? Thank you very much. But you raise your hand.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you mind telling me your name, just so you know people?
I'm Blanca Recio,
Blanca.
and I teach entrepreneurship as well.
Okay, so what would you think of this? They really work very well together. Does that surprise you or not?
No, I
Yeah.
thought it was fantastic.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it really sort of gave them that practical aspect we'd like to see,
Yeah.
that it's often difficult to do in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
Because they got to actually practice creativity, they had been really being a risk taker.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, an immense amount of risk that she took going into a situation that was a little uncomfortable, being able to work through that. What does it feel like to be in
Yes,
an
yes.
uncomfortable terrain?
Something we need in entrepreneurship classes, right? A certain confidence with the uncertainty, the risk-taking, very, very interesting, I thought, too. So are you going to have calisthenics in your class or anything like that?
I do all types of
Or-
interesting things in my classes.
I have
I'm
an 8:30 class, and 8:30 is the early class at Franklin Marshall, and people from the city. And I've toyed the idea of doing 20 jumping jacks, okay? But I'm gonna have a member of the football team lead that. If it goes wrong, I want that person to know. But there is something to go on about, there's all sorts of interesting studies about how walking helps creativity. That's the reason I don't stand by the podium here. That's the reason I asked for this mic, because I do think physical movement encourages creativity. So we see on one hand kind of a crossing of some of these boundaries, crossing business and little arts, all right, and in a way that is very important for her future in business, right? Very good, I love it. Anyone else see anything going on here? Yeah.
Same kind of idea.
The names, please.
Terry Johnson.
Terry.
Just the left brain and the right brain, same kind of idea, the
Yeah.
creative and the analytical.
Yeah.
Because she's in business, she's used to the analytical, and doing the dance brought out the creative, and then there's pathways that get created between the two when you use both of them.
I mean, maybe that's something to think about as we bridge business and the little arts. Are we connecting two sides of the brain here? I mean, I ask people to think about right now that primarily in your class, do you use the left side or the right side? Do you ever try to stretch that? I think there's a lot going on there, And I think you'd find that some disciplines tend to go one way or the other, and people aren't always aware of it. So she's making that connection. That again, so there's a real sense of connection and collaboration. That's important too. I mean, we want our students to do this. Sir, he looks like the statue of the thinker right here, right? So I think that some brilliance must be coming. Am I right, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way I see it is, coming from, my name is Nelson Gomez.
Nelson, yes,
I teach
please.
accounting.
Okay.
So-
Accounting's very creative, right?
So yeah, so we can relate that student to someone who's taking accounting, who is a student who feels that he's always being challenged, he's being constrained, he has to remain focused.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he was able to see himself in an atmosphere where he can just relax and expand other areas.
Yes.
Right? So what I see is someone who was able to change that pressure.
Yeah.
The pressure she was putting on a daily basis in the business side, and then able to liberate herself on the art side. So, but that's very difficult to do.
Very good. But more and more, you want to come and dance with me a little bit?
Trust me, I'm a good dancer.
I'm a bad dancer. You can teach me. That's great. But
Very unusual accountant.
accounts are more and more have to be problem solvers. Right?
Yes.
They're not bean counters. They're not. And so that creativity, that willingness to think and original, and then also the need to collaborate. Collaborate. She's becoming more comfortable with collaboration, I think, here. It's very
And
important.
particularly now when you have a lot of students who do not talk to each other a whole
Yeah.
lot, so maybe this class is giving an experience to be able
She's talking about being connected with the group.
Exactly.
Wouldn't you like that to happen in all your classes?
Which I do, I make them do groups.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'll invite you to our class, because you said you're good, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
This is on tape, so we got you, okay? Sir, were you raising your hand? Oh, you were mugging for the camera. What? Yes, sir.
So I have a
Name, if you don't mind.
my name is Will Naris.
Will.
I'm a math professor.
Oh, math.
So in the beginning, she hated the dance studio. She had a fear, but then she started to enjoy it. And I think that concept, especially in a subject like math, is extremely important because students walk in with a fear.
I can't do math. I can't do math.
And so if that can happen with a lot of the courses, I think students will start enjoying education instead of looking at their previous experiences and already walking in with the mindset that they're hate it or they're not good at it.
See, but there's two things. First of all, how do we get students to deal with their fears? Good or right? And also a mindset, I'm I'm good at this, I'm bad at that. You got to get away with those mindsets. You know, I don't know how many students tell me I just can't do math. You know, or I'm not a good writer. You know, I always say you're not a good writer yet. You know, but one thing about putting subjects together like that is it gets them out of the fear, gets them out of sort of typecasting themselves, often in negative ways. You know, we have a wonderful professor at Franklin Marshall that teaches calculus through art. Can you imagine that? And she's really doing very, very interesting things. Okay, well, any other comments before I tell you what I see? Yeah, and your name again, please?
Michelle. Ryan.
Michelle.
Yes. I did hear her fear, but underneath all that, I think there was an open-mindedness.
Yeah.
And that's what really struck me, that even though she was afraid, she was still open-minded. She wasn't resistant.
How do we create that open-mindedness in our students, right? You know, you see, I think in part, you know, when we teach our own little disciplines, you know, Foucault said they call it discipline for a reason, and what he means by that is we are subtly disciplined by getting masters and PhDs to look at the world in a particular way, right? It's limiting in certain ways, right? And of course, if the students come to our class, it's easy almost unconsciously to put these barriers, these limits on them. But when you put these two classes together, the barriers go away. You have to be a little bit more open. So maybe that's another advantage of having people teach across the disciplines of arts, is that we all recognize maybe some assumptions we are bringing to the classroom that we no longer fully realize, right? Because one of the things, when you study a subject very, very deeply, it's kind of an enculturation process. It's a socialization process, right? And you may forget things. So I think that's one of the real benefits. And that's going on. She wouldn't have been that open just in an entrepreneurship class. Or maybe if the dance students weren't that open either. So I guess I'd say that openness is important. Again, the team can do that sort of thing. Oh, I think you guys get my talk. Okay, here, guys.
Kristen.
I know, philosopher, okay.
I was also thinking about mindsets, but of the instructors.
Yes, yes.
Because learning happens, it's a nice reminder that learning happens in different ways.
Yeah.
And I find that I get kind of stuck in this mentality that, especially in our discipline, lecture, discussion, writing.
Yep.
Lecture, discussion, writing. Like you have to keep that model to make it
Yeah.
rigorous. You know?
It's the discipline we've done to ourselves as philosophers,
And
right?
we need to think about changing it up.
Yeah, that I do notice several changes. I talk more about changing it from the faculty too. You know, going on. No two ways about it. Believe it, this is a faculty development as well as for the students. Well, Dwight, I have to footnote a number of you, and since a number of you are famous, this article is going to go to the New York Times right away. Okay, but let me tell you what I saw. And it really mirrors, overlaps a lot. You know that because I think what you're seeing here in this paired classes is simply another way of contextualizing liberal education, right? It's another way of showing relevancy of a liberal arts class to someone's professional ambitions. And what I like about this example is I think this contextualization is happening at a number of levels. And this is kind of the second thing I'd like to emphasize here, that when we think about contextualizing liberal education, showing the connections or relevance of a liberal arts class to business aspirations, we can do that at many levels. We can do that through content or capabilities. Those are the most obvious ones. That is, we can do it through what a student knows or what a student can do. But we also can do it through the kind of person the student is becoming. That I've really seen how at F&M people learn at 3 different levels. They learn at the level of knowing, content. They learn at the level of doing, capabilities, skills. But they also learn at the level of being, the type of persons they're becoming. That when we teach, we affect students' dispositions, their values, their outlooks. And you have to think of all these 3 levels, I think, if you want to contextualize in the richest way. And that's what I like about her example, because it seems to me it's happening at all 3 levels. At one level, she's learning new content. She's like learning some new physical moves, right? But you can see that content, she knows something, but you can see, she sees it has a wider effect on her. You know, she talks about, I just love this phrase of being both calm and energized. I wish I could be both calm and energized, I really do. This knowledge is having a wider effect. It's happening at the level of what she can do. She's clearly learning new skills of thinking creatively and working collaboratively, right? But I also think it's affecting her at a deeper level, the kind of her dispositions or her values or outlooks. you know, it seems to me this class, and it mirrors some of what you said, I think, Michelle, that she's taking a step to a life that is more open, more inquisitive, you know, a life that's more willing to collaborate with people from different perspectives. And I think also a life that's more willing to have some confidence and be able to engage in risk, you know. I mean, clearly all these qualities are part of what the business world is looking for, all right? So I guess one of the things, the second thing I can leave you is when you think about contextualizing liberal arts, all right, try to think of these three levels, okay? How can you do it at the level of knowing or content? How can you do it at the level of doing or skills? But also, how can you do it at the level of being, the kind of person they're becoming? Because, like it or not, we are affecting students' dispositions, outlooks, values, aspirations, and that you don't want to, if you really want to richly collaborate, you also have to think at that level. Now, to talk a little bit, though, about changes that faculty go through, because I think that's true, is that if we hope to contextualize liberal education in this rather richer way throughout these three levels, what's the work that we have to do? And there is work that we have to do. You know, I guess the second thing I'd really like to emphasize, or maybe the third, I'm not the quantitative person, sorry, one second or third, one of these, okay, that I'd like to emphasize is that when it comes to business professors in the liberal arts, we don't know each other's disciplines as well as we think we do. We don't know. People don't think, well, I know what they do in this class. What I've seen in my own experience, we don't know each other's disciplines as well as we think we do. For instance, if someone were to ask me what happens in a dance class, I've never taken a dance class, you know, I would say, well, you probably learn some physical moves, right? And you do. But when you talk to Pamela Vale, this marvelous dance instructor we have at F&M, the moves are only a means to the central purpose of her course. Her course is all about self-awareness and self-knowledge. It's all about the self-awareness and self-knowledge that comes from being more comfortable in your body, being able to intimately collaborate with others, and an awareness of your physical surroundings, all right? You know, one of the things, when I talk to business leaders, one of the things they are looking for is the ability of a student to read a room, to walk into a room and be something of a presence, to be able to understand the dynamics of that room, understand the physical environment. It seems to me that dance has something to teach us about that. It's very, very valuable for the business world. It's one of the key things business folks talk about. And so you have to understand more than you think you do. We have to all admit our own ignorance, you know, that we're all less developed here. You have to understand what the other party is teaching. But to really collaborate, I think you have to go deeper. You have to understand not only what is being taught. Here's my other big point. You have to understand the who that is doing the teaching. You have to understand why someone has chosen to spend their life in philosophy or math or accounting or economics. You have to understand what motivates them, what their aspirations are, right? And most importantly, you have to understand the personal imprint they bring to their subjects. If you were to talk to Brian, the guy who teaches entrepreneurship, he just doesn't teach entrepreneurship. He teaches entrepreneurship a la Brian. He brings his experience, his perspectives, his values. And Brian is as much part of that course as entrepreneurship. Same is true of Pam. She doesn't teach dance. She teaches dance a la Pam. And she brings a world of experience from New York City and her professional experience to dance and what dance can do. And so as you begin to collaborate, realize you have to know not only what is being taught, but the who that is doing the teaching. Right? And my last message to you in closing, because she told me not to take too long, which is hard for a lawyer, because I'm used to billable hours. The longer I talk, the better, okay? But she told me not to take too long, is that what you have to do is what I've recommended in that article I've all sent around. We all have an article on academic friendship. I'm glad to pick up on that, all right? But you all have to, at one level or another, engage in this process now of academic friendship, of knowing not only the what that's being taught, but the who that is doing the teaching. And that really is my invitation to you today. I want to engage in an act of academic friendship with you, and I'm looking forward to our time together, and I'm looking forward to how we both surprise and delight each other. Don't let me down. Thank you very much. And if I haven't haven't taken too long. I can take some questions or
You
not.
can take questions, and
Okay.
I wanted to make sure everybody has the article that he referenced. Okay, let me get you guys.
I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but this is one of the articles that I kind of sort of dashed off at one level or another. And yet it's gotten more recognition and more impact than articles I worked on for a year. I don't know why that is, but it plenty of sort of touch people in one way or another. I regularly hear about it. Not that it has to touch you. I mean, you may, if you want to read about Aristotle, I'm glad to send you that too. She's the only one nodding. Oh, you're nodding a little bit. That the accountant's not nodding, and I don't want me to send you Aristotle here. But at any rate, really, I've learned a lot already. I hope to learn more. I gather from Margaret we have time for a few questions if you'd like me to expand on anything. Yes?
I have a question, Jenny Cannon.
Jenny.
English and Communication.
Oh, English. I was an English major undergraduate.
The question I had was about the student, you were talking about, Michelle was talking about openness in the student and her narrative. And I heard that too, and I wondered at that time, because you mentioned that you were teaching business at liberal arts college, those business majors then drawn to that college would seem to be the type of student that would be more open, perhaps, than the average student. Would you say that that's so?
I think that's fair. So, they like the idea they're going to a good liberal arts college. But they come with an anxiety. They do come with anxiety that, gee, if I major in history, where does that lead? If I major in English, where does it lead? And so they probably are open, but they share this anxiety that is part of that relevancy and connection. So that one of the things, and if you're interested, if you Google my name, I've written about how we do business differently. We really don't do it in a kind of traditional way. The notion is to combine business content with those sort of critical, creative thinking that's part of liberal arts. And so there's three parts of that. First of all, a traditional business program is taught largely largely in a instrumental way. It's taught, you want to make money, this is how you make money, right? And we combine that instrumental approach with kind of a critical approach too. Like for instance, in finance, any finance folks here? I don't know but in finance, you're taught, it's part, that the purpose of the firm is stockholder maximizing shareholder wealth. And we teach all that theory, but then we go, why is that the purpose of the firm? Are there different purposes of the firm? There are plenty of firms that don't act on that, right? Who would win, who would lose if we thought about it differently, right? So first of all, we bring a critical perspective, not just an instrumental perspective. Secondly, in a traditional business program, it usually is taught from one standpoint, the standpoint of being a manager, how to manage, right? We make a point of teaching it from a multi-perspectival way. So we talk about what business looks for managers, but also employees, also customers, also citizens, a very large stakeholder approach, which introduces a number of the liberal arts subjects. And finally, the other difference is we teach it in what I call a richly contextualized way. So, for instance, if you take organizational behavior, you'll learn about groupthink, right? And it can easily be taught as simply a practical dynamic that any leader in business needs to know about groupthink. But we say, oh, you learned that, but what does this say about the nature of the self, right? What does it mean that we tend to think like others around us? What sort of models are being employed? And so if you begin to do a business program where you introduce critical perspectives, where you think in terms of multiple standpoints, all the stakeholders involved, right? For instance, we often ask, well, why is it that most business courses will teach a business program teach a course in marketing, but not consumer protection, right? See what's going on there, right? Now, of course, when I said this, there was a blog, one of my articles, and the blog read, leftist professor takes over business department, all right? And believe me, my politics are not that far to the left, all right? But I mean, when you do that, you're rattling the cage a little bit, but the cage needs to be rattled. I mean, one of the things, if you teach business today, you need to realize that basic questions about business are being asked. You can see it in our political debate right now. This has to be part of any business students' education today. So we try to teach it in a way that is more analogous to an area of studies, if I can put it that way. You know, when we teach business, it's really analogous to teaching the way they teach gender studies or environmental studies, right? It's an area that can be enriched by multiple perspectives. So accountants have something to say, lawyers have something to say, but also so do people in anthropology and philosophy and biology have something to say. So we teach it as an intentionally a more broadly focused cross-disciplinary area of studies. And the students love it. They seem to love it, you know, because they get that excitement of liberal arts, that meaning and purpose, but yet, then they go for a job. Our students go to Wall Street all the time, you know, and they, employers seem to really appreciate combining these skills, we think liberal arts skills, with some real content knowledge of finance and so on. You know, that I spoke about my dad, and you know, he was an economics major at Trinity, went off to a management trainee program, did very, very well for himself, right? But he was in a world where companies spent more time with management trainees, you know. Our students have to be ready to go from the word go, right? So, you know, that's why it's so effective combining some knowledge of business, even for an English major, a history major, right? They're ready to hit the ground running. And you need to do that today because companies aren't giving that sort of long-term investment in their employees that they used to. So, I'm sorry, a long-winded lawyer answer, but you made me think about it. So Thank you. The silence means either you're bored or awed by my wisdom. I'm not sure which one.
You know, a lot of things are, you know.
Percolating, good. Well, talk out loud. What's percolating with you? You're an entrepreneur. You haven't been able to percolate a little bit.
Well, no, immediately I was thinking about the CEO roundtable.
Yes. Boy, they shifted gears big time. Maybe you should, not everyone in the room may know that, but that's a critical, you mind telling people about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess forever and a day, right? Those of us that are in business, we understand that our sort of primary responsibility as a CEO was to ensure that your shareholders were happy. And a way to do that is by making sure you're as profitable as possible, right? Because there's a direct link between profitability and your stock price, right? So.
And maybe your salary too, right?
And definitely your salary, as I tell my students. And then, you know, we started, you know, of course there are other stakeholders, and anyone who's been in business school in the past, you know, at least 30 years has talked about these other stakeholders that he was just highlighting. But all of a sudden, corporate America took a stand in the CEO roundtable to actually put it in writing for the first time and say, well, really, in order for us to be profitable and for us to take care of the shareholder, doesn't mean we don't do that anymore, but it means that we need to have a larger purpose. And we need to take care of all of these other stakeholders as well. You know, and there's a lot of debate as to why they chose to do that.
Right.
I mean, there seems to be a greater role because of the instability we have in governments nowadays. But, you know.
You know, what I wonder about, and by the way, there's a great article by Claire Preiser of the Aspen Institute asking what difference should that new statement mean for business educators. If you Google Claire Preiser, Aspen Institute, you'll get it. But I would think that is an opening for the liberal arts, isn't it? Right? You know, in other words, if you want business to think that the lingo is not simply in terms of shareholder value, but shared value, right? You know, that means you have to understand a wider range of needs and perspectives, and that's where, for instance, you can learn from someone in history, someone in philosophy. So she's arguing that educators should pay a lot of attention to that and see what it means in terms of incorporating the liberal arts. Because these are not fringe, these are mainstream companies. This is corporate America that is putting in writing. We, you know, and there's a lot of speculation as to public relations. They're worried about Senator Warren, you know, but the fact that we put it in writing means there has been, I think, some sort of shift going on that we all should pay attention to. Yes?
In the same tune, from an accounting perspective, basically the same comment. Companies will tend to provision an amount that is not realistic.
Yes.
So they can smooth out their profitability.
Yes.
So it pulls everybody in
Yeah.
to that culture. And
Yeah.
then you have the analysts of these companies that also concentrate on revenues.
Uh-huh.
That they should be increasing every period.
Yeah.
So then that happens to create misclassification of some revenue accounts as well.
Yes, as a lawyer, I've been
So-
involved with
so-
some of this, yes.
So there's a lot going on behind that culture, and
Yeah.
everybody's involved in a way with everybody's impacted.
Do you talk about this with your students?
Yes.
Because I'm fascinated with the way, triple bottom line accounting, where more and more accountants are trying to talk about how to place a value on things like the environment, right? Because, if you can't measure it, it's hard to value it, So it seems to me there's a lot of interesting, creative things to be done along those lines.
I always use like the Pinto scenario.
Oh, yes, well, the Pinto, yes, the great lawyer perspective, yes.
Provisioning for the Pinto accidents. And
Yep.
so I explained to them how a company would provision to that Pinto scenario, and their brains go like,
Yeah.
that really happened?
Boy, yeah. And I mean, maybe you should tell me about the Pinto case just briefly. Does everyone know the Pinto case, or?
I mean, you asked that wrong. I mean, I'm familiar with the Pinto, but I didn't know.
She knows it, she knows it.
No, I don't. What does it mean to provision? I'm still on, when
So,
you're provisioning. a
Another
basically,
P, right?
You're projecting a future impact, and you put it in your books now before it happens.
Oh, like hedging your, oh.
Yeah, so-
Ooh, that's not good.
Yeah.
It's like my
Not to
daughter
be
says,
ridiculous,
I'm almost done with my homework, all right? And
wow.
she's nowhere near done, but she's projecting she'll be
But
done.
the fact that the company knows that the Pinto was going to grow up and people were going to die, and the company decided to put it into the market, accountants had to provision for that before it happened.
Do a cost benefit, right?
Yeah.
Now, what will they save and by not switching the gas tank, but what will cost them in terms of lawsuits?
Yeah.
And apparently, it would cost them less in lawsuits, so the story goes, than changing the tank, so people die.
But think about it, you will have a stats, somebody from statistics
Yeah.
come up with this number for them. So
Yeah.
even that person was involved too.
Right? I actually had the chance to talk to one of the folks
Everybody's involved.
at Pinto who made this decision at one point, and I said, what were you thinking? Well, he said, we weren't. He's a very bright guy, but he didn't recognize the ethical issue. And be a bit careful when you criticize someone in this nice, safe academic environment,
Yeah.
as opposed to when you're there. It's interesting, we're in those fast-paced environments where everyone's talking one way, you miss ethical issues all the time. Good people do bad things all the time. And so they weren't monsters in any way, they weren't psychopaths, But so I believe he simply said, I didn't see the issue. I didn't see it. But see, it's easier for you and I. It really is. Be very, very careful about how you predict this, be in a situation before you're there. Like for instance, that one of the big discussions in the history class. Well, what would you have done if you were in Nazi Germany? What would you have done if people said, "Hey, be a bit careful what you really would have done." We're all affected by other things. Clearly your students will think now, and you're doing good work because of that.
But if you do a statistics job, somebody's going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much I can compromise to say, oh yeah, for you, you know what I mean?
What I find is, one thing that happens in business is a lot of decisions take place at a certain level of abstraction. Accounting, economics, right? And what's interesting is to tell particular stories. That's where literature helps us a lot. It gives very concrete narratives that enrich the discussion. So I think some stories can be very helpful in that regard. Okay, she's going like that. So thank you all very much.